Thank you. Thank you for coming here today. What we are going to be talking about is using nature's patterns to achieve optimal health and well-being. And we're going to be talking about sacred geometry. Now, sacred geometry is a lot more than just patterns. And it's a lot more than just the designs and even the things we're used to thinking about with sacred geometry, like the pyramids at Giza, Renaissance paintings, and the Renaissance churches. It's more than that. It's working even more than describing the way atoms work all the way up to the way the galaxies and universe works. It's more than working with that. It's even more than working with time itself and how that works in rhythms and cycles to affect energy on the planet and what's been going on for millions and millions of years. I'm going to talk to you today about who you are on a level that takes you into what are you? What are you doing here? What's your purpose in being alive? And we're going to talk about dowsing, because what you're doing with a pendulum and moving energy, there's a geometric pattern to that. There's a form and an energy that you're playing into, that when you know who you truly are and you're able to activate that part of your being and work with the tools that you work with, you can see how they become an extension of the patterns that exist in nature, the patterns that exist in creation, and why you touch that creator within you and you bring that into reality. And never doubt that. Never doubt how incredible it is to be a human being, because that's the gift that we're all partaking in right now. So, using nature's patterns, before we get into some of the tools and things that I'm going to talk to you about, I want you to really start looking at this question, which is, who am I? And ask that really deeply. I used to spend more time on that, and this question that soon follows is like, why am I here? But what happened is people started spending too much time thinking about, I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm married, I have kids, I do this in my life. But that's not really who you are. You're not all this stuff. You're not this character that dances around and does things. You're more than that. So that's when we really need to go into this question. What am I? And so that's what we're really going to start exploring right now. What are you masquerading as this human being? So this is a very, very powerful statement. So I'd like you to look at this, and I'm going to read this with you. I can't see it on the little monitor. So it's 99.99999% versus 0.00001%. What this is saying is that all material things are made up of atoms, which are made up of subatomic particles, protons, neutrons, electrons, which are 99.99999% energy. And that leaves only 0.00001% that's matter. So think about that. Every physical thing in our life is not solid matter, but rather fields of energy or frequency patterns of information. So matter is more no thing, energy, than something, particles. Our physical bodies and the body of the physical universe are as proportionately empty as is all of space. So the essential nature of our material bodies and that of the solid appearing universe is that they are both non-material. They are both made up of non-stuff. That's the essence of everything that we're interacting with. So only 0.00001% of me is what you're seeing up here flapping my arms. And that's what I'm looking at out there. Only 0.0001% of who you truly are. So, the universe, full of stars, full of galaxies. When we look out into the universe at night, what science says we are seeing is only 5% of what's there. So on top of what we've just been talking about, as far as when we look at physical matter, we're really only seeing a very small percentage of matter. It's mostly energy. But of the matter we do see, science says we only see 5% of it. 95% of all matter and all energy is dark. Now, what that means is science can't see it, but there's evidence that the way the cosmos is being sculpted, the way the light patterns move through galaxies, some incredible mass is moving space around, moving galaxies and sculpting them into light and dark areas. A tremendous mass that we can't physically detect except we see the effects of it. So we know something's got to be out there in the universe, 68% something that's mass that we cannot detect, so we call it dark matter. You know, just a catchphrase for something so mysterious, we don't know how to find it, detect it, work with it. And furthermore, what's going on with energy is 68% energy, 27% matter. 68% of what we aren't knowing how to interact with or detect is energy. And what's happening is energy is coming in from somewhere into this universe, and it's causing things to expand even faster now. Far past the Big Bang that happened, almost 4 billion years ago, we are expanding faster now because something is propelling this universe to move faster. And we have no idea what it is. It's got to be some kind of energy. And so that's why 95% of everything we see is full of something we can't see. Now, on top of that, empty space is full of virtual particles. What that means is that quantum physicists have taken a pint of space and calculated the amount of energy that's in that pint of empty space. And what they found was it's 10 to the 121st power. That means it's 1 with 121 zeros after it. That's how much energy they calculate in a pint of nothing that we can detect but space. That's a figure that's bigger than all the grains of sand on this planet. All the grains of sand that are kicking around on this planet don't even come close to that number. All the stars in the sky that you see don't come close to that number. It doesn't make any sense. So they threw it out. They can't. How do you work with a number that's so much energy that it's more than anything you can even witness in this universe? But that's what seems to be the case. There's something going on in space that is empty, that's energy. And what is it? That's what we're all looking at right now. So this is a model of who you are. And what I'm wanting to point out is that little bit on the top, you see, that's you showing up here. That's what we look at, that's 10%, like on an iceberg, 10% seen, and 90% is unseen, hidden. So that's what we're putting forth as what we are. Only a small bit of us we really can recognize and understand that that's us. And that's where science thinks everything comes from. That means everything is happening inside, between your ears, in this gray matter, in your head, and you are creating the entire universe. The entire, all consciousness comes from in here. And yet, what we're looking at, if I turn this image over, I think it's a better metaphor to understand what's really going on. That the largest part of ourselves, which is yet to be discovered, that's what's creating this part that's seen, that's standing up here. That when we look at it from that perspective, that the energy that precedes what's created here, that energy is what's projecting into this dimension, the third dimension that we're all interacting with right now. And by turning it over like this, we get a sense of all of what precedes what's going on here right now with this physical body, what we're working with. That's all energy. Energy on other dimensional levels. Energy on levels that we can't interact with, just like 95% of the universe that's dark matter and dark energy. Something is moving and animating this body that doesn't come from just inside this body. And that's what we're looking at. How to discover that and work with that. Because that's what we're doing all the time. When we're working with things like we're talking about energy and we're moving energy, it's like, where is that coming from? That's the bigger part of ourselves that's interacting with a reality that we aren't totally familiar with. And that's a lot of what sacred geometry is about. It's about putting all of these things into order, bringing them into a pattern we can understand. And so working with this larger part of ourselves, we have the late German physicist Burkhart Helm. He divided the universe into 12 different dimensions, many of them linking spirit and matter. And string theory postulates a multi-dimensional universe. And so these are new thoughts to science, Western science, I should say, and yet, every single indigenous culture always worked with a multi-dimensional reality. They always worked with their ancestors, with the spirit of the rocks, the spirit of the land, the spirit and the information that was coming in from the trees and from the plants and from the animals, from the unborn that were still to come in, that spoke to the mothers and spoke to the tribe. I mean, there are tribes where the unborn would literally sing their song into the tribe, and they would take that in. The mother would take that in, and it was interesting in some of these tribes I read about where when that being would get off center, would get off purpose, the tribe would put them in the center, and they would sing the tone, they would sing the sound, the song that being had sung to them before they came into a body, to put them back in order, to put them back into connection with spirit, and to let them know who they truly were. And so indigenous science is something that's been going on for thousands of years, that's in our roots, and that's what I think we're rediscovering today, how to take the present day knowledge and bring it into relationship with what we know deeply within us. This is a chart that shows these dimensions. It's one of many, many different ways that we can break the dimensions down into a way where we can start to relate to them. In this case, this is called the Ledbetter Chart. It was done around the time of the Theosophists, early 1900s, 1920, I believe, with Annie Besant and some of the channeling going back then. And this is like 7 planes, 7 dimensions, broken down into 7 subplanes, and working with the physical and the etheric that's right around the physical, as well as then the astral and the mental. And, you know, these are all, I think, the most important ones to relate to are on the astral and the mental level, because they're the ones that we're interacting and growing into more and more at this time in creation right now. And on the mental level, the language that works with communication is sound. And that's why, you know, when we communicate mentally, I'm up here flapping my lips and making these tones, and, you know, it's amazing that you're able to decipher that and turn that into meaning, turn that into understanding. And we're hardwired to do that. There's actually a part in our left brain where it's hardwired to create tones and sounds in order to create communication. They've had examples where children have been raised without any kind of interaction, and they found that they started creating their own languages in order to communicate, in order to send energy and information back and forth using sound, because it's on the mental level. On the astral level, that's where we find the emotions and those colors that are often seen by people that can see auras in the field around us as it starts to interface into the etheric. And the etheric right around the body, that's where you find acupuncturists use these needles that are sometimes a couple inches long. Did you ever wonder why they were so long or had a little spiral on the very end of the needle? It's so that it can break through the etheric field and move energy through that field, which is right next to the body, into the acupuncture points in the body. It's doing dowsing on the body, that little spiral on the top, just like the pendulum spinning. It's putting that spiral energy, that vortex into the meridian, breaking through the etheric field into the physical, and moving energy through the body to bring about balance and healing. And then when you get to the physical, the language of this dimension is geometry, because it deals with, you know, the width, the depth, the height, physical stuff. It has dimensions, it has rhythms, it has patterns. That's why everything in nature follows very particular patterns and cycles. And when we're in nature, I mean, it's so incredible to be up here at Kanuka, because in this space, the energy feels so clear. It feels so much better than when you're in a city with a lot of rebar and concrete around you, where you're piping in frequencies of computers and Wi-Fi's, and you have no connection to the earth to be able to ground that energy. And so that's the natural order of things, brings our body into a natural order, into a natural space. And that's what we're looking to create all the time, that connection. Now, we live in a 3-dimensional reality. That means, like I was just saying, we have an x-axis, we have a y-axis that goes up and down, and we have a z-axis that comes straight out. So an XYZ axis gives us the 3-dimensional reality that we're walking around in. A man in a book, on the other hand, he only has 2 dimensions, a flat kind of guy. Now, you know, we've learned how to work with books. We've learned how to understand that what we're looking at is a picture of something. It's not really like that, but we translate it in our heads because we've been taught to do that. We think it's a fairly natural thing, but a lot of our understanding is totally a learned response. For example, in Africa, there's a tribe of pygmies I remember reading about once. A very well-known sociologist, Margaret Mead, took them out of their jungle habitat and took them out onto the plains. On the plains, they saw an elephant in the distance, and that elephant started coming toward them. And they were totally freaked out because they could not understand this magic. As this elephant moved toward him, he got bigger and bigger. And the only way they could explain that increase in size was magic. He was magically inflating. Because you see, they lived in such a dense rainforest area that they could never perceive more than, a matter of feet in front of them. So they had no sense of perspective. Something us looking in a book, and the Renaissance artists have been working with perspective and making things get tinier toward the back. It's something that we learned, and it's been taught to us, and so there are so many simple things in our reality that we take for granted that are really a learned response. I mean, matter of fact, this thing called karma, that sometimes we get the sense that karma is you do something bad to someone, and that means something bad is going to happen to you, so you go, oh, that doesn't feel good, I better not do it anymore. But karma is so much more involved than that simple understanding. Karma is literally the thousands and thousands of lifetime expressions that you have had where you've looked at reality and you've codified it this way, you've learned it this way, and then another lifetime reinforces that, and you say, oh, men are like this, women are like this is reality. And today we are working through thousands and millions of filters that we have created inside of ourselves that says reality is this way, and I know, not just because my parents told me, my teachers told me, but my thousands of lifetimes of experience have shown me how to interact with this reality. Well, something needs to clear that. That's what spiritual teachers are talking about when they're talking about all of this being an illusion. How do you cut through to the reality, the truth of who you truly are, which is inside you? And even though we had that chart with the dimensions, they're different frequency dimensions. So they operate on different levels of energy. But it's not like they're up there and we're down here. It's like they're inside and we're on the outside. Think of it that way too, because truth is in you. That's where all the universes, all the other dimensions exist, within your own being. And to access it, you access it through your heart center, through your core. That's what is really activating and working the brain. Not, we don't just exist up here, but actually they found that there are more signals. I mean, there are neurons that exist in the heart, and the heart sends more signals to the brain than the brain sends to the heart to give it feedback on what to do. Actually, the biggest mass of neurons in the body that exist outside the brain exists in the gut. And what is going on with your digestion, what is going on with the bacteria in your system is feeding into your brain and your emotional body more than any other part of your external body. So how you're feeling has a lot to do with how you're digesting. And how you're digesting is not only what you're eating, but how you're eating it. How you're thinking about it, what you're putting into it with your thought. It's a two-way street. This body is an amazing thing, the way it communicates or doesn't.